Good morning.
Good morning.
I had two wonderful unfoldments this morning. Must have been 4 or 5 o'clock. And both of them are going to be helpful to you, more especially those who in some way have the responsibility of practice. And the first one was that I had been carrying a load of responsibility, almost you might say as if God's work were my responsibility and I was responsible for seeing that it came through well. Now, that isn't something you do voluntarily or consciously. It's something that creeps up on you with anxiety in your work. And all of a sudden the unfoldment came, God is responsible for its activity. You just be the vehicle, the instrument, and drop that responsibility for its success. And that took a big load off of my shoulders. And then it reminded me how sometimes in the practice, how in healing work, we also become anxious, more especially at those times when we seem to have critical cases, acute cases, and how the fear comes that we may not measure up or we may not arrive at the correct understanding or sufficient understanding, and how in those moments it becomes necessary to know that this work is God's responsibility and that we are but the instruments for its activity. This sounds like something you've heard as long as you've been in truth. And probably it is. But nevertheless, when these lessons come home, they are important. And they come to us for a reason. And so remember, in your own work, should you get to a place where you seem to be carrying a burden, and especially the burden of responsibility, to loose it and let it go in the realization that this is God's universe and that this ministry is God's ministry, not ours. And then in that relaxed sense, whatever is necessary for us to know or do will be given unto us. And the second unfoldment that came right with it was this, that all of these claims that come, regardless of what form, they are temptations that in and of themselves are of the nature of boomerangs. You remember that no weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. No weapon. It doesn't make a difference whether it comes in the form of sin, disease, lack, limitation. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. But there is, and this was part of the unfoldment, there is an if about that. Because there are loads of weapons that are prospering against those, against them. And the if was this: if we are maintaining our spiritual integrity, then no weapon that is formed against us can prosper. If we are guilty of a spiritual offense, an offense against the spirit, then these weapons find their mark. Now, by guilty, I do not necessarily mean whether we have stolen or committed adultery. Those may be minor forms of guilt in comparison to the real sins that we commit of a spiritual nature. And it is on these points that we must be careful. No weapon of sin, disease, death, lack, or limitation can come nigh our dwelling place if we are standing in the Word of our spiritual identity and of the spiritual identity of this universe. As long as we are maintaining our spiritual integrity by having no other gods but the one, and loving our neighbor as ourselves, there are your two commandments. As long as we are maintaining that spiritual integrity, no weapon that is formed against us, the diseases of ourselves or our patients or students, or their sins or their lacks or limitations, or any form of appearance, any form of discord or inharmony, all of these are boomerangs that return to their native nothingness, unless we barb them by being guilty. If we are guilty of having a power apart from God, or of not loving our neighbor as ourself, then we barb these boomerangs and they whack right at us and cut us down. Whereas, standing in our spiritual integrity of one power and recognizing God as individual being, thus loving our neighbor as ourselves, these things become boomerangs and return into the place from which they came. Nowhere, no time, no place. The veil of illusion. I felt that these were important unfoldments because between 1 minute and the next minute there was as much difference in my being and bearing and attitude as between a storm and sunshine. The release was so sudden and so complete with those realizations that I knew that that was the wind-up of our message. That was the seal to set upon all the work we've done this month, because from the beginning of it we have held closely to the two commandments. To have no other gods, no other power, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And so that came, and the nature of these claims that come on us as boomerangs, and the fact that they cannot come nigh our dwelling place as long as we are standing in our spiritual integrity. It is our guilt that makes them hit us, our lapsing from the realization of our true being. And then again, in the same first chapter of Hebrews, and again, when he bringeth in the first begotten into the world, he saith, and let all the angels of God worship him. And of the angels he saith, who maketh his angels spirits, and his ministers a flame of fire. But unto the Son he saith, thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. A scepter of righteousness is the scepter of thy kingdom. Thou hast loved righteousness and hated iniquity. Therefore God, even thy God, hath anointed thee with the oil of gladness above thy fellows. Thou, Lord, in the beginning hast laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the works of thine hands. They shall perish, but thou remainest. Evidently they shall perish, but thou remainest. And they all shall wax old as doth a garment, and as a vesture shalt thou fold them up, and they shall be changed, but thou art the same, and the years shall not fail. We're speaking always now of that Christ, of our own being, our own divine sonship, to whom these ministering angels minister. But here we come to, and thou, Lord, in the beginning hast laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the works of thine hands. They shall perish, but thou remainest, and they all shall wax old as doth a garment, and as a vesture shalt thou fold them up, and they shall be changed, but thou art the same. And here we have the lesson which forms the basis of the Infinite Way message, and that is that consciousness is the cause the creative principle, the law, substance, and reality of all form. And these forms will change, just as our concepts of being will change, of body, but the consciousness will remain forever the same. The crops will be removed from the trees and the gardens, but the causative principle will remain to form them anew. We will change from babies to children, to youth, to adults. Our forms, our bodies will change. The organs and functions of the body will change, and some of our functions will come to a period of the end of their service to us, but others will be formed anew. Always consciousness will be appearing in ever new and higher forms. And we must not cling to any form, no matter how good it may appear to be. We must not cling to any form of good. Remember that we do not live on yesterday's manna. And to try to hold on to yesterday's manna, or yesterday's concept of body, or yesterday's concept of supply, or yesterday's concept of activity, of business, or of modes of business, to cling to yesterday's modes of giving treatments, to yesterday's modes of prayer, would really be trying to cling to these forms and effects and not giving consciousness its sway. And so we see here, the years shall not fail. As a vesture shalt thou fold them up, and they shall be changed, but thou art the same. They shall perish, but thou remainest. Whether we lose our fingernails or our hair or our skin, always those things perish, but we remain, and these other things are renewed. And so the idea of immortality begins to unfold when you look at trees and see the leaves in fall, begin to fall. When you see the flowers drop and begin to realize that you are not seeing trees or plants, you are seeing the outer form. The tree and plant remains when there is nothing visible to your eyes. All that you ever behold with your eyes are the effects of life, the effects of consciousness, not consciousness itself. You go on forever, even while these outer forms are changed. All around you, nature is changing. And within you, your own body is changing. But do not accept that as the world accepts it, as a sign of age or change, or running down or falling away. Accept that as the necessary changes of form in accord with the activity of consciousness. Consciousness is the God, the creative principle, which is forever sending itself forth into manifestation. Now there's no manifestation, no form that is ever lost, regardless of what appears to be the outer changes. They all come back to their base again and are renewed. And so with us, we are the consciousness, we are not the form. We are the consciousness back here watching those nails disappear and the skin slough off and the hair get cut away. We are the consciousness watching that, just as we are watching the body go through the changes from infancy to maturity. Now, as we take that position that we are consciousness and that all that appears in our outer world is consciousness appearing, then we can watch these changes without fear, without doubt, without anxiety, without concern, realizing that as long as time goes on, we as consciousness will be watching all of these outer changes and not clinging to yesterday's concepts of form. But to which of the angels said he at any time, sit on my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool? Are they not all ministering spirits sent forth to minister for them who shall be? heirs of salvation. So everything there is in this universe is a ministering angel to those who are the heirs, the children of God, the sons of God, and that we are. Our divine sonship is the one thing we know about ourselves which is the permanent reality and truth. And all else, whether books or hands or bodies, talents, arts, abilities, all these are ministering angels given to us for our good. We are speaking about this nature of error in the sense that we have been trying to unsee the snake and to see the rope, whereas we ought to understand that the appearance, whether existing as snake or rope, is a matter of indifference. That which is. And merely to change the appearance from snake to rope doesn't change the nature of that which is. And in the same sense that in our metaphysical world we were using truth over error, we were using truth with which to overcome error, we were trying to rise above error, we were trying to destroy error, we were even trying to overcome sin. Whereas in our higher vision, where we have seen oneness, we know there is no such thing anymore to be accomplished. We are not using truth as a power, nor are we seeing error as something to be overcome or done away with or healed or reformed. And so when an appearance touches us, the appearance must have the reaction in us of, so what? As we are shown in the New Horizon, in the Infinite Way, that good humanhood is the opposite end of the stick of bad humanhood, then why try to change bad humanhood into good humanhood? See through the picture to the Son of God. Now, about 2 years ago, I gave to the students in the practitioner groups that teaching of the middle path, in which, when you are confronted with any appearance, you do not deny, you do not affirm. If you were to affirm the evidence of the senses, that would be wrong. If you were to deny the evidence of the senses, that would be wrong. Therefore, you have to take the attitude of neither seeing good humanhood nor bad, sick nor well, but looking right down the middle path into the very eyes of the Christ. Well, that is very much the same with this idea of is. Now you are confronted with a snake, and instead of trying to see a rope, you look right at your snake with is. There is something. It is. And eventually you see it as it is. You see? Now, your healing work takes on an entirely different complex. The moment that you're not trying to change your snake into a rope, or the moment you're not trying to unsee disease, or a sick person, or a sinful person, the moment you're not trying to say, oh, right there is the Christ. You see what I mean? There is your duality. And so you do away with that. In this is. You neither affirm nor deny, but you realize is. And in your is then comes from the spiritual center, the soul center, the vision of that which is. And of course, outwardly it'll appear to us as a healing. See? But we will all the time know that that never could have been, because there never did exist anything but the is, whether it appeared as a rope or a snake. In the application then of the is, The secret of it is no labels, no opinions, no theories. You look at everything in the understanding, if anything at all, of not knowing what it is. Merely that it is. The only thing you know about it is existence. That, of course, you're sure of because you're sure of God. As long as you're sure of the infinity of God and omnipresence of God, you're certainly sure that something is. But that is all you know is. Now, in that sense of vacuum which is created by having no opinion, no label, no judgment, out comes from the spiritual center of being the light, revealing the nature of that which is. And so the whole work of this is all taken from the Master's statement, judge not after appearances, judge not after the appearances of the eye, but judge righteous judgment. Now, one day we brought out the meaning of the word righteous. Righteous does not mean correct, and it doesn't mean moral, and it doesn't mean good. But righteous judgment means only the judgment of God, God's judgment. So you can't judge at all, right or wrong. You can only let God judge and make its judgment known to us. And so it is. That word righteous must always be understood as an activity of God. I've never seen a righteous man begging bread, and it certainly doesn't mean a good man or a moral man or a churchly man, because we've seen lots of them begging bread. You see? But a righteous man is that man living as the emanation of God, that man living in his spiritual identity or in the realization of his true source. That man certainly could never want. He would walk through the wilderness and be fed all of the time. He would go through the Red Sea. He would find manna. He would find water. He would find cakes baked on the stones. He would find ravens bringing food. The righteous man, the man that is fed of God, nourished of God, nurtured of God, who receives his impartations of God, that man would never be begging bread. And so, the man who judges righteous judgment is the man who has no judgment, who neither says good nor bad, right nor left, aye or no, and lets the judgment come to him from within. There, as you read your books, you will find that I have said the entire secret of spiritual living is to become a state of receptivity, in which you're continuously becoming aware of the truth of being from within. You see? And so it would be with this is. You would not dare have an opinion or a judgment, nor would you want to change a bad appearance into a good appearance, which could immediately take on 7 bad appearances, taking out one devil to make room for 7. And so the safest way always is the realization of God. God is, and this is enough to know. Then let righteous judgment come through. Now, you do the same thing all the time. When you read a play, and you know right well that something has to tell you whether it's right or wrong. You can't sit there and judge with your head, because who knows what day something entirely new may come into the world in the form of, and if you're judging by past standards, how are you going to recognize it? Too many wonderful things have disappeared from our view, because when it was presented to us, we judged it by standards of yesterday, by our preconceived opinions, and said, oh, this doesn't measure up, it can't be good. And then a Shakespeare came along, or an Edison came along, or a Bell came along, but entirely different than the world had ever dreamed, and so unrecognized. So it is with art, isn't it? Always new forms of art, and a whole quick to say, oh, that doesn't measure up to the pattern that we've drawn this last 100 years, so it can't be art. And then 100 years later, somebody discovers it is art. Do you see? And so it is, if we look out at each other through our preconceived ideas or our race-conscious beliefs of what constitutes good or bad man, we'll be doing the same thing as has been done for generations. This generation will always be the worst one. Right? And the good old times were always the best ones. And there never was a good old time, and there never was a better or a worse generation. Do you see what I mean? Now, when we, however, approach life from the standpoint of the is, then this thing keeps continuously revealing the nature of that which is and the rightness of it, even if it's appearing in forms not recognized by us. Now, this I have witnessed in the work, that if you look upon cancer or consumption or polio, paralysis, from the medical standpoint, you've got to agree that it's bad. If you look upon them from the standpoint of our attitude toward them, it's always bad, you see. But in the allness of God, how can you account for anything being bad? So the best way to do is to take the attitude of not judging, but letting this unfoldment come, and then what happens is these shadows called those diseases have a way of disappearing. And no other way. There have been times when forms of mental practice, which was mental suggestion, worked. Even Coué's method worked at one time, self-hypnosis. Every day in every way I am self-suggestion, auto-suggestion. Every day in every way I am getting better and better. And pretty soon it gets to be so. Just like the man who's told every day he's looking worse, he gets to look that way. Certainly we respond as humans to the power of suggestion. That is how propaganda has worked in wartime, and that's how some forms of advertising work, through the power of suggestion. Now then, it works less and less. That's why these advertising firms have to change their system of advertising. Every few months they've got to try new gimmicks, for the simple reason the old ones don't work anymore. The mind becomes immune and builds up an immunity against propaganda and against auto-suggestion and outward suggestion, and so something new's got to be tried. Well, in the same way, mental healings are not a success. And sometimes where there is a temporary healing, it does not prove to be permanent. That is, one mind operating upon another mind with suggestion, until finally you say, oh, I feel wonderful. And maybe temporarily you do, but then there's always tomorrow. Now, in the spiritual healing, you do not influence a person's mind or body. In spiritual healing, your contact is with God. The reason your patient gets the benefit of it is they have made the contact. They have said, give me help. You have said, do you believe that I can do this? Even if you haven't said it, the mere fact they're willing to pay you for it shows that they have faith in it. You see that? The mere fact they're willing to go out and make a visit, to call on you, that they're willing to do something, to put out their hand. Rise, pick up thy bed and walk. If they're willing to pick up their bed, if they're willing to stick forth their hand, do you see what I mean? If they're willing to make a gesture, they have that grain of faith that will bring the healing. The rest, then, is up to the practitioner's consciousness, his realization of not accepting an appearance as real, not accepting any suggestion of a selfhood apart from God, whether of good humanhood or bad. Now, your best, most successful practitioner will be the one who rises the highest above good humanhood. Even your beginning practitioner, who's grateful when the fever goes from 102 to 100, will do some healing work. But your best healing work will be done by the practitioner who says, what difference if it's 106? Christ still is, you see. And in that proportion, then, you come to an individual who, although seeing all the appearances of sin in the world and disease, they do not react upon them. He knows their universal nature. And what difference does it make whether this fellow is being tied down with a sin, or this one's being tied down with poverty, this one's being tied down with a cancer? To that practitioner who has arrived at the state of not differentiating between good and bad humanhood, none of these claims make a response. They see through and they get the healing. But while you still are dealing with error as error, as we have known practitioners to do, to bawl a patient out because they've been under treatment for alcoholism and took a drink tomorrow or today, and then got a bawling out, you know better, you shouldn't have taken that first drink. You see what I mean? And in the same way, other people have come in and were bawled out for being jealous or envious or something of that kind. That is not the healing state of consciousness. It doesn't mean that the individual isn't aware that there are still these forms of discord, but they are no longer personalizing him. They're seeing him as a universal or race claim, and going still further by not trying to change them into something good, because the real vision is on our divine sonship, on our spiritual nature and being. Okay? I hope this will clarify itself, but this is the vision that was there. It was the Master saying, I send you forth, and it had to do with be what was it, pure as dove, wise as serpent. Yeah, what was the other part? Harmless as doves, and wise as serpents. And in that came this, that as you go forth, of course, in your spiritual purity and your integrity, which represents that first commandment and the second of the Masters. You go forth in that purity, all right, but in being wise as serpents, it is in the sense of not reacting to the appearances and not arguing or fighting with them. That's the vision that I just saw. You must not reach out to argue with anybody or with anything. Do not react to the appearances of evil, to the arguments of evil. Do not refute, either with person or with condition. Don't set up a meeting of the issue. Don't have a yes and a no. Don't have an argument against either the condition or a person. Go out in the integrity of your spirit, of your understanding of that only one power, and of loving thy neighbor as thyself. But don't argue with anybody about it. Don't try to sell it to them. Don't try to convince them of it. Don't get into any discussions or arguments with them about it. Go through them. And the same with conditions. Don't refute or argue conditions. Walk through them. Go right through them as if they had no existence. Do not react. Do not, see how poorly I state this and how clear this vision is, of non-resistance, of non-aggression, of non-fighting, arguing. There is your wise as serpents. I suppose glide would be the word, wouldn't it? Glide in and out and around. But don't oppose, and don't permit yourself to be opposed. Either with person or with condition. It's the same thing. You may readily avoid arguments and discussions with people and then get into one with a cancer or consumption. Okay? Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Be as gentle as the doves, and as pure, but be as wise as that serpent, in the sense of no opposition, either to person or to condition. Don't refute. Don't deny. Don't argue. Don't take a stand against. But walk through. We come up to a wall and we stop short, whereas one day we will have the vision that will enable us to keep walking, and we will walk right through the wall, because there is nothing in a wall to keep us out except our innate sense that stops us at it, our inbuilt race consciousness that it is solid. Now, if the time ever comes when that leaves us, we will walk right through, and we are doing that. We are walking on the water, and we are walking through walls of disease with none resistance, none argument. And it is in that way that we are drawing together these classes, not by arguing, not by beseeching, not by begging, but by walking along, minding our own business, not regarding appearances and not fighting appearances. Now, that's what came in that vision just now. If we go out as sheep among wolves, it must be that in our vision must be the wolf of God's creating. That comes back to that vision of Isaiah again that we had the other evening, that the wolf will lie down with the lamb. And in order to go out as a sheep among wolves, it can only be successfully done if we see through the appearance or through the human concept of a wolf. And there's no way to do that by changing our thought about a wolf. The only way we can do that is to is, and to recognize this is something. Now let us behold it as it is. Let the vision come to us until we do behold the wolf as it is. But then, of course, that word wolf becomes translated into the cancers and consumptions and folios and paralysis of the world, all of which are the wolves of this world: poverty and depression and inflation. They are the wolves of the world, but there is no way to face them by changing our thought about them or denying them. The only way that we can be out in that world of wolves is with our spiritual vision. First, no power apart from God. Second, loving our neighbor as ourselves, and through that, catching the is, so that we do behold that which is the spiritual reality of all that appears to our senses. Yes, there is but one way to go out as sheep among wolves. Let us behold the wolf of God's appearing, of God's creating. And that translates itself into strange language when we say, let us behold the cancer and consumption of God's creating. But in a sense, that is what it amounts to, the realization that we're beholding something that has no real entity as it is, but about which we must feel and find a spiritual realization. Not that we're going to spiritualize a cancer. That we are not going to do. But we are going to get the vision that shows us neither snake nor rope, but that which spiritually and divinely is. Otherwise we would be changing a snake into a rope, whereas here we are doing neither. We are not changing disease into health, but we are looking through and behold. This is so powerful. This subject should be meditated upon, pondered for ages and ages and ages, until some realization comes of what that spiritual universe is like that God created in His own image and likeness, which is the true kingdom that is on earth as we perceive it with our spiritual vision, with that soul sense, the soul capacities. There is no universe here to be changed, healed, or corrected. But we cannot see this world as it is through the mentality. We must behold it with that inner vision. Then can the sheep move among the wolves. Isaiah 61. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He hath sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord, and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all that mourn, to appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that He might be glorified. And they shall build up the old wastes, they shall raise up the former desolations, and they shall repair the waste cities, the desolations of many generations. And strangers shall stand and feed your flocks, and the sons of the alien shall be your plowmen and your vine dressers. But ye shall be named the priests of the Lord. Men shall call you the ministers of our God. Ye shall eat the riches of the Gentiles, and in their glory shall ye boast yourselves. And in that you have the whole nature of spiritual man. It is spiritual man, that is your divine sonship, that has received the Spirit of the Lord. The Spirit of the Lord is upon our divinity, upon our real being and nature. And it is that builds up the waste places. It is that which restores us, restores the years of the locust. It is that which brings the enemy under our thumb, the enemy not being a man or a nation. Now, as we catch this vision that Isaiah has given us of the Spirit that is poured upon individual spiritual man, upon the Son of God, and realize that that divine sonship is inherent in our own being, and that it is the power of resurrection, it is the power of restoration, it is the power of building up the waste places, it is the power of the healing of the sick, of the raising of the dead, and that this means the restoration of our true identity, the restoration of the actual consciousness and awareness of our true being. Then do all these former enemies, the physical body, the sins of the flesh, all of these come back to minister unto us in their right nature. Everything that we have looked upon as an enemy of our existence now turns around to prove to be a ministering angel or a servant unto our being. There is the messianic promise that that which has been called the enemy now is revealed as a very servant or tool of our being. That which has been called evil now is restored to its complete and original glory. I hope that out of this you're going to make a thorough study of Isaiah and catch this messianic vision of his and see it as the promise of the realization of the Christ, of our own being, and of its mission and of the nature of its fulfillment. And then you'll see even more clearly the nature of error. The nature of error is that which will fool us into an attempt to overcome or destroy that which in reality is a servant of our own being, that which is really a part of our demonstration of good. And Adam has called it evil. Adam has called it enemy. And yet these are servants to minister unto us. Is that clear? It'll become clearer as you study Isaiah. This, you see, likewise reveals wherein spiritual wisdom differs from metaphysics as it is generally understood. Spiritual wisdom does not use truth as a power over error. It does not use God as a power over evil. Spiritual wisdom has come to see that there is but one power. If you will work with this, just this one statement of spiritual wisdom, if you will ponder the depth of the meaning of this one revelation of God as infinite being, God as infinite being, This alone would remove the major discords and inharmonies of sense from your experience. This one point would enable you to heal. There is another point revealed in this same manner, and that is that there is but one demonstration to make, and that is one's consciousness of truth, one's realization of the Christ. This one realization appears in the manifest world as the harmonies of our daily experience. The moment we come to this place where we have understood God as the one power, our thought no longer attempts to correct or heal or improve or change anything in the world, anything in the realm of effect. This recognition enables the mind to be continuously at rest, and you soon find that its only activity is that of receptivity, of receiving the thoughts from God, the divine impulses that flow to us from the depths of our withinness. The mind is at rest the moment it no longer seeks to acquire, to achieve, to accomplish, to change, correct, improve. The mind is at rest the moment it realizes God as the governing influence, the creative principle, the maintaining and sustaining principle of life. The mind is at rest, and it is in this rest that faith comes to fruition. Faith is not an activity of the mind. Faith is found only in the quietness of the mind, in its stillness, in its ability to be at rest. Can you imagine your mind at rest? Only if you can feel, if you can inwardly discern that there is a spiritual influence governing all being. Then, with the mind at rest, you have entered the faith. With the mind at rest, the soul speaks. The soul governs. The soul is at work. With the mind at rest, the soul shows forth God's handiwork. Faith, then, has found its reward. Aloha, this is Joel.